Have you been looking for a Taekwondo podcast with qualified people who know what they're talking about, who help you keep up with everything going on in the Taekwondo world? Well, you found it. This is the Taekwondo Podcast. Taekwondo news, competitions and other events, training and sports science, keeping the fans, coaches, and high-performance athletes up to date with the latest news and trends on Olympic Taekwondo. Let's do this. This is the Taekwondo Podcast. And now your hosts, Coach César Valentim and Peter Nestler.
Hello and welcome to the Taekwondo Podcast. We are a podcast based out of Austria in English language for everyone out there who likes Taekwondo. On this episode, we talk about the competition season that is about to start, new events and opportunities. Welcome to our podcast. I'm Coach César Valentim, and with me is Coach Peter Nestler. Hi Peter, how are you? The World Taekwondo Federation decided a couple of years ago that December and January should be an off-season hiatus. And in February, we get back to competition. How does the upcoming season look like to you?
Well, this year will be quite a complicated year because there is still the pandemic. We don't know what will happen in the next few weeks. We see numbers of infections rising sharply, so it's difficult to calculate. We have a lot of events on the calendar now, but we don't know which of them really will happen, which of them will attract competitors. You could see that some of the early events don't have that high numbers of inscriptions, though they were put to T2. It will be a difficult season, in my opinion.
Well, we've seen that in other sports, some of the events, because of the restrictions of the countries, or the lack of restrictions in some countries, they ended up being COVID clusters. We have the case of Hungary, where they organized a handball event, and because even though the concept and regulations of the event allow them to have a safe bubble, the fact that the hotels and some of the places that the athletes and teams shared with other people in a country that didn't have the regulations like mandatory mask allowed them to have contact with people that were not following the same prevention plan, and therefore creating clusters and even in some case canceling events. It's one of the things that will count in the next few months, the location of the events and where we are organizing the events. Maybe choosing countries that have lower restrictions allows us to have the events, but in other cases increases the risk a lot. And once the players are there, it's probably a little bit too late, and the events get to have some different challenges.
Yeah, on the other end, you say the countries with lower regulation level. On the other hand, you have countries with a high regulation level, so they tend to cancel events very early. It's a difficult season. It will stay a difficult season. The bubble system is the only thing that makes real sense, but it has to be restricted to the event itself. So no influence from other tourists, or even the people working there have to be included in the bubble system. So it's a lot of brain work to do to have safe events.
The amount of events in the next few months is actually impressive. The calendar, the World Taekwondo calendar, has been updated almost weekly. Some events have been added, some events have been pushed forward. It's a little bit hard to count on the events. Some events are overcrowded, others are not. It makes the teams have to pay close attention to the registration lists and talk to other teams to understand which ones will be more busier than others. It allows, of course, to decide in just a short notice which events we're going to go to, therefore making the periodization, the training plans a little more flexible, but also a little more complicated. How do you take into consideration those events when you plan your training plan?
Well, regarding the training periodization, we have in the moment the calendar is full, so you have to calculate with a full calendar. if some of the events drop out, well, they drop out. It's okay. You just keep continuing with your trainings plan. Regarding the allocation, which events to visit, that's a strategy. That's always a strategy. There is the top level athletes. They will just collect their points at any of the events, and then there's the big mass of athletes, which sometimes go a more strategic way to collect points in the current ranking system. This will be difficult because if you set on one of the events with maybe a lower level of participation and that one drops out, you will lose the points, or you could not collect any points. So very difficult year this year, but yeah, it is what it is.
We are on a race to 2024. It's 2.5 years until the next qualification, so the athletes need to take as much points as possible from these early events that are not cancelled and that we are with most certain going to have and to be able to compete at. Allows us to also have a lot of blocking, a lot of undulation in the periodization, so that the players keep with the peak performance as long as possible, drop for just a little moment and go back. Of course, having the 2 months hiatus that allows us to have a kind of off season between December and February, it's important for the athletes. But I think that the 24 months cycle is a little bit extensive cycle for the teams that are struggling with the logistics, struggling that the athletes are not professional and they have to attend school, university. Do your players look into the future with a positive mindset? Do they see this? Are they aware of what's ahead of them?
In some cases they're not, but I always tend to say that it's not their sole task to always think about the full picture. That's the task of the coaches and also the federations. We try to keep them away from all the problems. That's what we always do with the athletes. So that the full thing, like planning, with all the travel restrictions and whatever, keep it away from the athletes. That's very important. Keep them doing their sport only, to do the trainings, to do good fights in the events. That's what we want them to do.
Considering all the calendar and the fact that the travel restrictions, the bubble systems in the events, are you taking that into consideration regarding training? Because training is probably the most complicated thing we have to do in the very busy calendar. When to fit training events, when to fit training camps with other teams, test matches. How do you look into the bubble system, and what do you think it's going to bring to training preparation for most of the teams that are not in the big budget, in the big powerhouses, and don't have the budget to just go away for a few months and train in a bubble that's somewhere else?
Well, as you said, there's the big teams who always have their bubble system also in the training camps and wherever, and there's the smaller teams who cannot afford systems like that. And well, it's taking risk into the system. It's always important to know with whom you are having a camp, or who is attending a camp, and which championships, which events you're visiting. That's why I'm always asking the organizers about the COVID protocol. In some cases, I do not tell who it was. I get 2 pages, and that was it. I was not satisfied about that. Some cases, those are nice protocol, very sophisticated one, but that is what you have to take into consideration. Also, if you're a small team, don't go anywhere to do just training as you were used to, because once you get COVID or what into your system, it costs a lot of time, and as we know, the calendar is very tight in a moment. That will cost you a lot of opportunities.
Are you in favor of teams having bigger camps, continental level camps, or do you think during this competition season it's wiser to have smaller bubbles and smaller events?
It has to be the optimum size, let me say that way, where you can still control the bubble system. It does not make sense to have a very open system with big camps with hundreds of athletes attending and coaches and whoever is going there. You have to still manage the system.
You think the job of managing that system relies in the clubs themselves, or it should also be extended to the member national associations or continental unions?
They could take over some jobs. I mean, in the moment, a lot of those bubble systems are being created by clubs regarding the trainings, and the events are done mainly by the federations. There could be some guys responsible for creating such standards for the bubble systems, which could also be done by the continental federations.
So probably creating an alternative calendar, not only a competition calendar, but a worldwide events and promotional calendar that will go way above and beyond what the national teams are doing, but also the small organizations.
Yeah, that's true. Includes as in the moment you have standards for those camps or whatever, you could include them to a calendar, in my opinion.
This podcast is supported by Hawken Dynamics. Hawken Dynamics believes that technology is most useful when it stays out of your way. That's why Hawken developed the world's first wireless force plate system with extreme usability. It is the quickest, easiest to use, and most robust solution on the market. It is trusted by all sports organizations, large and small, as well as tactical, military, and rehabilitation environments around the globe. It's force testing in the palm of your hand. Here at Taekwondo Center, we use Hawken Dynamics to test and monitor our team. The cloud-based platform allows us to access data and publish a variety of reports on the go. My favorites are trend reports and, of course, weight reports, where I can monitor different metrics to view progress and identify performance indicators, or to compare weights to a baseline data range. I use it on a daily basis to identify readiness. A simple jumping test takes me less than a minute to assess the entire team. Having my own Hawken Dynamics force plates allows me to test reactive strengths, maximum strengths, rate of force development, asymmetry, and so much more. The real-time feedback on the app is useful not only for testing, but as a training tool, making it more accurate and at the same time more engaging for the athletes. If you are interested in learning more about Hawken Dynamics or getting your own, the team can be reached at info@hawkendynamics.com or on Instagram or Twitter at Hawken Dynamics. When talking about Taekwondo training, we need to talk about Athlete Analyzer. Athlete Analyzer is the first Taekwondo-specific athlete monitoring system. It is used by both national teams, regional squads and small clubs to maximize performance, prevent injuries and communicate with both athletes and trainer teams. Athlete Analyzer is a cloud-based system with a friendly smartphone app. You can plan and monitor every aspect of your training, even when you are not in the gym with your team. The easy-to-use video analysis tool is not like anything you've seen. It helps you understand your athletes and even their opponents, making this app the only tool you need to manage your team. Before I used Athlete Analyzer, I spent an absurd amount of time in front of the computer, creating spreadsheets and using half a dozen software solutions. I have athletes in my center, but also abroad, and with Athlete Analyzer, it's much easier to communicate, plan, and monitor their development. Now that I have extra time, I can focus on what matters, training my athletes, and it still leaves me some room to do other stuff, like this Taekwondo podcast. Athlete Analyzer offers you a 2 weeks free trial. Visit them at athleteanalyzer.com to sign up, or click on the link in the episode's description. To get the most of your free trial, I recommend you first book a free personal demonstration with Niklas. It will give you a great insight of what Athlete Analyzer has to offer you and your team. It is well worth the time.
You're listening to the Taekwondo Podcast. Now back to your hosts, Coach César Valentim and Peter Nestler.
So, welcome back. The events that we are going to be talking about, they're still a few weeks away from us because we're recording this episode ahead of time. So, for logistical reasons. We do have the list and we have an idea, an overview of the events that will be a little bit busier. We see that Fujairah, President's Cup, Turkish Open, they're not the numbers we expected, either too big or not as big as usual. How do you look at these events? Who do you think they will be at the first tournaments, and why are some events more competitive than others?
Well, when you look at the registrations in a moment, you will see that Turkish Open is below expectations. In my opinion, well below expectations. Also, President's Cup is below expectations in the moment. At the moment we're recording this podcast, the registration is still open, but I don't think that the numbers will grow too big. On the other hand, Fujairah is a huge event. It's really big, and some 800 competitors in the moment, maybe even getting more. That's partly, some things are partly because of the costs. We were talking about costs in another episode. So Fujairah was cheap flights. The registration was easy to manage. The rules are easy to manage for the teams. Maybe that is what makes the difference in the moment. The costs.
The Fujairah was usually a not so competitive event. It was a good event for you to start the season and make some medals. I think this year there's going to be a little bit of surprise for the teams who registered, because a lot of teams from all over, especially Europe and Middle East, are registered. Turkish Open, because it's an event that's usually so long and so well organized. It has always been a bubble system because it's always in event hotels. This time it's Antalya, so very famous for all the events they've been doing there. Do you expect Turkish Open and the President's Cup to be a little bit of a disappointment regarding the teams?
There is two aspects. One is the situation for the organizers. It's not good for them to have low numbers of inscriptions, so the financial aspect for them is also bad as well. For the teams, well, it depends. It could be easy to get points there. It will be easy to get points there because it's not many competitors. So you even have, you could get ninth place very, very fast. In the heavyweights, maybe fifth place, or even get a medal with just winning one fight or even less. Yeah, that's the two aspects. It was in former times not that easy. It changed a little bit, so it's tactics again for the teams.
The fact that the Pan American region hasn't started competing in Europe yet, probably due to the fact that our national team trials are still way undergoing, and some of them are delayed until February, doesn't allow them to compete internationally, since they have to focus on first winning the national team spots and then moving to international ranking points. The fact that you see in President's Cup, you see also in Fujairah that most of the North and South American teams are not competing, allows, of course, easier points for those first events. Very good tactics for the first teams. But another thing, as you mentioned, is the financial aspect. The events, due to the bubble systems, they're a little bit costly. The President's Cup, the hotel costs for bigger teams that have to stay many days in the events, because the competition is spread out through 3 days. It's only for the seniors, plus the juniors and the cadets, plus PUMSE, plus Para. It increases the cost a little bit too much for some of the teams to be able to afford it. Is the bubble system the best solution for these events?
Well, you have to take into account that there is a pandemic, so you have to fight the pandemic in that case. So you have a second opponent, to put it that way. And on the other hand, it clearly increases costs, for everyone. In the current system where it's mandatory, you have to book the hotel via the organizer. That will give them a little more security on the financial side. But on the other hand, it's much more expensive for the team. So that's always two sides of the medal.
The postponement of the World Championships to the second semester probably plays a big factor on such decisions in terms of calendar for the teams. Usually, the World Championships being in April or May, you had to qualify for the national team qualifications or even secure good ranking points for the good seeding at the World Championships. In the first few months of competition, people would do what they would call the European tour, and they would start with Germany, Slovenia, they would do Belgium, Netherlands, and all together in the same few 4 or 5 weeks. And this rush is gone since the postponement of the event for November for the Worlds allows you to have a little more time to collect those points, to collect those national team criteria points. Allows you also to focus on other things. The fact that the European Championships and most continental championships will be before the summer. The fact that in the summer, the World Juniors, World Cadets, and even the University Games will happen only in August, and they have different qualification criteria. They probably don't need the ranking points since there's no seeding for juniors or for cadets. Allows the teams to have a little more a little more time to plan their calendar, their events, their budget, mostly their training, to allow them to be achieving peak performances for shorter periods of time in different times of the season, not forcing them to have peak performance for 3 or 4 weeks in the entire competition tour, especially because we know that it's very hard to keep peak performance and doing weight cut so many times in a month. Regarding the summer, we have the World Juniors, the World Cadets in Sofia. We'll have hopefully the University Games in China. How do you think the junior and cadets teams are preparing for these events?
There's one aspect, the decision to postpone the World Senior Championships and the creation of the full calendar happened at almost the same time. So the calendar was built for an early Senior World Championships. It's not so for the juniors and cadets. So we have a date in summer, as you said, and you can easily plan your tour till there. So it should be plenty of time if all the events, or most of them, happen. It should be a little easier for the juniors and cadets because it's more reliable. And in my opinion, summer is always a good time regarding pandemic. Those events will stay, and you could rely on the calendar till there. So a more relaxed preparation for the juniors and cadets teams, not so for the seniors.
Regarding the athletes competing in these events, do you think most of the players that were competing in Tokyo 2020, 2021 will try to stretch their performance to 2024 in Paris, or you will see that some people will already go into retirement before that event?
Well, when looking at the age of some of the competitors, you might guess that not all of them will again compete in 24 in Paris. But on the other hand, we have now 22. It's only 2 years and a few months, so it's not such a big period. Let's see who really decides to stop.
I guess that many of the players that would not consider another Olympic cycle, realizing that this cycle is really so short, they might even extend it. Again, probably the postponement of the Worlds gives them a short-term goal, and between the Worlds and the Olympic Games being again 1.5 year difference, it's a good motivation. I think the World Championships and the results in the World Championships will dictate who is staying on the system or not. Probably for the next cycle, we will see players that we would not expect to see still in their 30s or late in their 30s trying to go for the last cycle.
That's true. I mean, not everybody's a Steven Lopez, but those days where you have pandemic, when some players drop out, everything is possible, in my opinion.
Thank you, Peter. It was a pleasure being here with you and with everyone who is listening. This was the Taekwondo Podcast. If you haven't already, listen to our other episodes that are available wherever you listen to your podcasts. We are releasing new episodes every Tuesday. Stay tuned, subscribe to the podcast, leave us a positive review, and share it with your friends. See you next time.
You've been listening to the Taekwondo Podcast, keeping the fans, coaches, and high-performance athletes up to date with the latest news and trends on Olympic Taekwondo. Your host, Coach César Valentim, has almost 20 years of experience with high-performance Taekwondo and has worked all around the world as a Taekwondo trainer. Peter Nestler has been teaching Taekwondo for more than 20 years, and he's currently one of the top referees in Europe. We hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on Instagram at Taekwondo Podcast, on Facebook at Taekwondo Cast, and the website taekwondopodcast.com. See you next time.